Now the story of the Jewish exiles who lost everything, and the one man who had no choice but to help them rebuild it. It's the book of Nehemiah. Hey, my friends, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, and we just finished up Nehemiah 1 yesterday, and we're ready to roll into Nehemiah 2. But it's not that simple. This isn't one of those scenes where it just cuts to the next scene or the next act. I mean, really, we're going from prologue to act 1, I suppose, here, if we're being slavishly loyal to how movies are built. But no, it's a prologue, so after that, you got to get the opening credits, the James Bond style. I mean, it's a Bible. It's probably a little less sexy than the James Bond thing. I hope so. I think it's a little trashy at times. But still, a really cool opening sequence with maybe silhouettes and bullets or swords or trowels. I don't know. So we get this awesome James Bond Mission Impossible style prologue. We realize that the main character is a tough, competent, well-positioned dude. And when you got a protagonist like that, things are going to get spicy. They're going to get real interesting real fast. And so then between chapter 1 and chapter 2, I'd like to feel like there's this imaginary opening credits to let you get situated and get your popcorn as you get into the next dramatic scene. The big, high-flying, dramatic music and spectacle of the opening credits is now behind us. We know who made the movie, and we got all of that stuff done. We got the prologue still lingering well enough. The opening theme now coming out of the credits settles down a little bit. And we just get one note that builds tension again, with Nehemiah having steeled himself, resolved to go and do something about the problem, to push his chips to the middle of the table, because he's cupbearer to the king. Here's what happens next. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought for him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before, so the king asked me, "Why does your face look so sad when you're not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of the heart." Fascinating. He doesn't kick down the door and say, "I've done all these things for you, and here's my request." In fact, he doesn't bring up the request at all. He simply uses shrewdness in the same way Queen Esther before him used shrewdness and knowledge of who the king is and what his personality is like to come at him in a way that he might be sympathetic to. Now, when we get to this matching high drama moment in the book of Esther, that's what we talked about in the last season, she has to summon all of this courage. She's got people fasting in preparation for her visit in front of the king. But also, by all accounts, she's walking into a much more mercurial king's throne room. Xerxes is all over the place. He was up and down. He's a puppet king. He's easily influenceable. He loved to simultaneously bluster about how important I'm the king of kings, the king of everything. I decided this is how it is. He really wanted people to know that he's a real boy like his dad, Darius. And then he totally deserved the title even though he wasn't the oldest. And that made him subject. I mean, he was super manipulatable. And so on the one hand, he was always saying stuff like that, but on the other hand, he was a sucker for things. Well, Esther is trying to save her entire people, and maybe she knew it, maybe she didn't. I never get the impression in Esther that she has the keen awareness of the big picture here that Nehemiah and Ezra do, but maybe she did. Whatever the case, she's trying to save her people, and maybe even she's aware that she's trying to play a role in the grand redemptive plan of everything. But if she had taken Nehemiah's approach that he took with Artaxerxes, with her king, Xerxes, Artaxerxes' father, I don't think it would have worked, because I think Xerxes was socially illiterate, at least as he's presented in the book of Esther. This guy just doesn't catch stuff. He's not attentive to other people's emotional needs. He's not attentive to conversational nuance. And so if she comes in and acts sad, she would have had to have slathered it on so thick that he would have felt accused or annoyed. And remember, Xerxes was very touchy about having anyone in any way do anything that gave the impression that he was not a real boy and the deserving king. He dripped with insecurity, and she knew that. He's worried about himself, not me, which I suppose is, I mean, that makes sense. He's a king. You're going to get a lot of that with kings. And so the way she plays it is she comes in and she says a ton of nice things. She no doubt timed it as carefully as possible to make sure that her arrival would only make him look more kingly and more impressive in front of a bunch of underlings, some eunuchs, and some soldiers that would have been in that room with him. She really knew how important looking good was to him, and everything she did made it clear that the great, beautiful Queen of Persia is completely in the service of this great king. She falls all over herself in front of that courtroom to make it clear that he is in charge, and that anything she would want to do, even if it's a bit coy, is to make him happy and bring him pleasure to his belly, pleasure to his eyes, all the pleasures that come from the great Queen of Persia, all the pleasures for which she was chosen in the first place. She knows why she's there. She gets what she's doing. It's for such a time as this, and she perfectly operates with shrewdness and cunning and sensitivity and empathy to these strengths, and even more so to the weaknesses of her king, Artaxerxes' father, Xerxes. And the outcome, as we know, is spectacular. Her enemy, Haman, is fully defeated at the word and the decision of Xerxes, who Esther has fully endeared to her. And in his embarrassment and frustration, Xerxes effectively cedes control of the situation to Esther and her relative Mordecai, and they make sure that the enemies of the Jews are defeated and that the Jews, and by proxy, the redemptive plan, are preserved. But back to this opening scene of the first act of Nehemiah, we learn really quickly that that's not how Nehemiah is going to play things here. It's not shrewd. It doesn't make sense. So the situation is similar, but what is right in this situation is not similar. The relationship is different. Nehemiah, as we're going to figure out, is really close to Xerxes' son, Artaxerxes. And Nehemiah knows that Artaxerxes is not insecure in the way his dad was. That generational trait apparently didn't get handed down. And he knows that Artaxerxes has the capacity for empathy and attention to the needs of other people. The fact that right at the beginning of this opening scene, it's King Artaxerxes who is able to observe that something is wrong is just mountains different. For those of you who just spent the last chunk of time with me in Esther, when is Xerxes ever like that? So it's very clear that if Nehemiah came in here with the kind of routine that Esther had chosen to employ, I don't think it would have worked. I think Artaxerxes would have been like, gross, dude. What are you doing? We have history. We have trust. Why are you talking to me like that? But instead, it's Nehemiah's time to walk in. He doesn't necessarily pick when he walks in. It's when the king wants wine. And so he took the wine and he gave it to the king. And we discover here that Nehemiah has been very shrewd. He stockpiled credibility as being an emotionally stable person with his boss, King Artaxerxes. He's not in bemoaning everything all the time. He's not the kind of guy who can only find some sort of meaning in getting attention from what's wrong with him. He's the kind of guy who's fine with just making it about the other person. And he's done that apparently for years at this point. And it occurs to King Artaxerxes, I've never seen you sad before, but clearly you're sad. Now, what does sad look like in this situation? Wait a second, where are we at? Nope. We're going to talk more about exactly how this thing breaks down and read further ahead as we move forward. But this is what I'm seeing. We're set up for an Esther-like scene. We imagine that we're going to push the doors open here and get another extravagant silk slipper king like Xerxes, who's sort of a boob and is easily manipulated. But instead, the doors swing open, and immediately we can tell this king is different than his dad. There's empathy in his eyes. There's attention to what's going on. His head is on a swivel socially, and the attentive viewer/reader can see right away, this is going to have a different feel. This is going to have a different touch. This is a different king. This is a different era. This is a different kind of hero solving a different kind of problem. Well, this is going to be interesting. Let's see how it plays out. More on Nehemiah chapter 2 next time around. Quick update. I heard from a whole bunch of you about the great sticker controversy of season 4 of the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. You see, we accidentally composited together a pretty good treatment of Ezra between the prologue, if you will, to the last season on the book of Esther. We did a bunch of stuff in Ezra through the first 6 chapters. And then we covered some more of that from a different angle here at the beginning of this season on Nehemiah. And then also we finished up the rest of the book of Ezra. Now, it didn't get the Matthew level treatment. It's not getting the Esther level treatment. It's not going to get the Nehemiah level treatment. And enough of you felt that. I got enough feedback that the feeling is we haven't earned it. And if we haven't earned it, we can't do it. So apparently there is to be, per your decision, no Ezra sticker. We can't cheapen the achievement stickers. And I think you make a good point. I'll see if I can add a little Ezra nod into the Nehemiah sticker. It's already designed, but I got a couple of ideas. We'll see what happens. Thank you to everybody who gave me feedback on that, and thank you all for taking the sticker system as seriously as I do. It's a big deal. I'm not joking. I absolutely love those things, and I love the fact that they adorn my Bible and my bookshelf right next to where I work. Those are the books that we got in our hip pocket together, and I think that's very fun. All right, more Nehemiah 2 next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.